So I'm using a platform called Restream that allows me to simulcast YouTube and LinkedIn Live.
Nice.
Very nice.
And it's obviously not the paid version because you can see the watermark and their logo in the corner.
Yeah.
I don't mind promoting them. They've been good to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, why not? Why not?
Content creation, you gotta improvise what
It's a hustle.
you
It's a
have.
hustle.
Yeah.
You know, you got the tools that are supporting the content creators and the content creators supporting the tools, you know, so
Yeah,
it's a two-way
exactly.
street.
Yeah.
The first one I started with didn't support, well, it supported multicasting, but you had to pay for it. So luckily I found this one that gives you 2 channels for free, which is all I need coincidentally. So that's great.
Nice.
So where can we see a chat? I think we have to look on LinkedIn, right?
It's on the screen. I've put it up on the screen. Can you see where it says new comments will display here?
Yeah, on the right. It's hazy.
Messages from audience will display here.
Let me say hi. Tell me if you see me saying hi.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where all the people. We've got one.
Nice.
We've got a live one. What's up, Isaac?
Nice to see
Isaac
you.
is a faithful. He's always here. Really appreciating his support. Isaac is amazing.
It's one of the loyal audience.
Is this Kuda Gariwe as in St. John's Gariwe? Because that would be amazing. I went to school with I think this is the same Gariwe I went to school with. Cool.
I'm live too.
It is. Hey, what's up, Gariwe? He was like the headmaster's son. So we never like made fun of him or hazed him. He was safe.
Wait, maybe we can ask him some questions about Caesar behavior, you know?
Go for it. I'm an open book. Kuda, tell them something about me. They want to know how I was like in school. So let's see who we have online.
This is cool.
So for those who are joining online, just say hi in the comments so we know who you are and what you do. Kuda says I was well behaved. I was a well behaved lad. You see, guys?
I can believe that.
Yeah. That's believable for sure.
Probably a bit cheeky, but well behaved.
So, Bassi, you do these every week or is it every other week?
No. So funny story. I was doing them every week at one point, but that started interrupting with date night because date night is Fridays.
Okay.
So I had to cut down to twice a month for the sake of the marriage.
I think twice a month is still pretty good.
It's good enough. Yeah. I think I don't burn out too. So.
It gives you, I guess, some time to prep as well, guests and stuff.
Exactly. Hey, Christian. Christian is here. Thank you for coming.
Nice to see you, Chris.
Hey, Chris. This is here. And
then
we've got one that just says LinkedIn user is to have an
So if you've got LinkedIn open on like another device, you can see who that is. I don't know why sometimes it doesn't show who's who, you know. So at the 5-minute mark, we'll kick off. Hi, Fiona De Cruz. Thank you for coming. So for guys who are online, just start thinking of questions around design and development. That is our topic for today.
Indeed.
Let's see what we have. Is there anyone joining us from YouTube? Just curious. We've got anyone from YouTube. So hi everyone. LinkedIn user is Karabo, head of experience design at Nihilent. Hi Karabo, thanks for joining. And I think with that we can kick off. So thanks everyone for coming. Today we have Jay and Saad, who you might know from their podcast. I was the first guest on their podcast, which was an amazing conversation. So I'm sorry, guys, you were not my first. My bad. You
okay.
should have been. So yeah, tell us a little bit about Jay and Saad, starting with Saad.
Sure. So welcome everyone. This is quite different for me because I'm usually on the other side of the pond. Having guests on mine and Jay's show. So yeah, as Batsy said, I'm Saad. I've been an front-end engineer for since 2012 now. So it's been a while. Have a very big passion and background in design, so I'm very acquainted with the UI and really like to stay in that space. So I haven't really branched out of that. I chose to stay on the front end for those reasons. And so I'm currently working as a front end engineer at Al Musafir, which is in UAE. So I've been here now for nearly 2 years. At the company, nearly 3. I was remote for the first year. Just started a new role, so I'm now into people management and trying to shift my mindset, which is interesting. And yeah, in my free time, I run a podcast with Jay, who's the other guest on the show, and just that's about it, really.
Awesome. We're going to dive into that people management piece.
Cool. Okay.
And Jay, what's up? Tell us about yourself.
Hey guys, hey everybody on the call. I'm Jay Tulloch. I like to call myself a product designer. I've been kind of designing kind of online experiences for customers since 2009. I like to say I'm like classically trained in kind of product design, and kind of what I mean by that is I've gone through like 6 years of kind of formal education around kind of product design as well, and designing for human factors, both kind of offline and kind of online as well, physical digital products, which ultimately kind of led me into the world of kind of user experience, where I kind of like worked my way kind of through different industries, and kind of most kind of recently I headed up design teams in the UK in fintech for a UK bank, and kind of even more recently kind of heading up a design function in the UAE for Al Mustafa as well, kind of just like Saad, and focusing on kind of growth and scale and efficiency when it comes to the kind of design team kind of making an impact on the business ultimately.
Awesome. So you're both based in the UAE now, right? You're both based in Dubai.
Yeah.
And
That's
from London, the UK. You're both working there, I guess, at some point. But did you know each other from there, or you met here?
No, like we literally met here.
Oh, great.
We're actually from a similar region in London as well. So both from the south. Jay's from the southeast. I'm from the southwest. So it's very interesting.
Awesome. And how would you compare the design industry and obviously the engineering between the UK and Dubai or Middle East? How do those stack up?
Jay, you wanna?
Yeah, that's good. That's a very good question. I think from a design kind of perspective, I wouldn't say it's too different. In the sense of, I think the UAE has kind of got to a point now where it's attracting some kind of really high talent into the region. And like that talent is definitely 100% comparable to kind of what I was kind of used to finding kind of in the UK, and more specifically kind of in London. I would say that the pool of talent is probably smaller compared to the UK, and I would say the competition in the UK compared to here is a lot fiercer, kind of as well. But saying that, with the kind of startup market here in the UAE kind of booming, startups are appearing and emerging kind of every single week now. And you kind of see them kind of hiring kind of aggressively as well. I've got no doubt that the UAE is going to be kind of fast catching up with London scene, if not overtaking in the future. Interesting.
From the engineering side, I would actually say it's pretty similar. I was taken back actually so I was quite ignorant before I moved here in terms of understanding if my role actually exists in this side of the world, right? So one day I was just like browsing LinkedIn and just looking through different countries and regions and stuff, and realized that similar technologies, if not more modern technologies, were being adopted here as well. So that was definitely something that took me back a bit. And since being here and working with different individuals and different engineers and from across the different countries, and it's much more diverse here. See, London's very diverse, but here's really diverse, right? So I was exposed to much more different cultures, and people come from different regions and stuff, and it just really surprised me because we all spoke similar languages in terms of technology, right? And especially on the front end. So I was really taken back in a good way. And I started obviously seeing the different startups that are emerging and the different types of technologies and services and stuff that's coming out of this region. So yeah, I agree with Jay, actually. I think if they're not already ahead, they're on the right track for that.
Awesome. So we have our first question from Isaac. How do you guys balance creativity with meeting business objectives and your clients' needs? I think, Jay, we'll start with you since you're the creative, quote unquote, creative here.
Oh, man. I knew it was going to fall on me. I think that's a great question. And I think that's something which ultimately it's a constant kind of battle, kind of so to speak. And I think it also kind of depends on I guess we can call it like the life stage of the business. So for instance, certain businesses might be doing kind of pretty well, right? And they're kind of in a market where they're kind of they're dominant. In which case, everything becomes kind of operational. Everything kind of simmers and is kind of growing kind of organically at a decent rate, or at least at a rate which is kind of enough to kind of please the kind of shareholders and the board, right? Which means that certain companies can then afford the luxury to kind of take a step back and start thinking about innovation and start to kind of think about ways that they can kind of please and kind of delight customers kind of outside of, say, the funnel, for example, or try and kind of please and delight them through kind of extreme kind of scenarios, or through kind of neglected kind of scenarios, such as one that's common is like the cancellation process, for example, like when kind of customers might cancel a subscription or cancel a product or a membership or something like this. A lot of the time, like, product teams don't focus on that because they're just focusing on kind of feature delivery. But some teams, some companies that are doing extremely well can have the kind of luxury to kind of focus on those kind of nuances and those, kind of extreme cases or neglected areas of the product, which then kind of allows them to kind of be more kind of innovative. On the flip side, you've got companies that are growing aggressively and they're very much focused on, customer kind of conversion and increasing revenues at kind of an aggressive rate. And that usually obviously is going to be kind of a top-down kind of driven kind of approach where, the CEO's friend, for example, might have a bad experience or might have given some feedback, and now the team has to kind of respond and kind of react to that kind of request, right? But ultimately, like, when you're in those kind of scenarios, you still have to ask the question, kind of what problem are we solving? Like, are we solving a problem that is going to So are we putting effort into solving a problem that is going to kind of solve an issue for a few people and can have minimal impact, or is this a problem that is going to be solved for the masses, the mass users for our product? And it doesn't really matter which is the answer, but when it comes to the business side, it's like which one's going to have the most value. So you could solve something for a small portion of your user base, but that could have high value and high returns for the business. Or you could go for the masses, but it has small return. So that is kind of a debate that you just have to kind of have with the business, with your PMs, and use that kind of discussion to kind of prioritize kind of what you focus on. And kind of based on the answer that you get, then you can understand your user segment a lot better, and then you can think about how you can kind of be more kind of creative in the overall kind of solution as well.
Right. Wow, that's really
answered the question.
Yeah. I feel like you have. I actually have a flip side, reverse version of that for Saad. So we're having a issue at the moment where we're trying to find a balance between performance and customer needs. So I would say to you, for example, how do you find the balance, Saad, between performance and providing a great customer experience? For example, if you have a screen that has a lot of API calls, it might affect performance, but those API calls might actually be trying to provide an amazing experience for a customer on that specific screen. So how do you balance that performance versus great customer experience?
It's a very good question. The first thing is, straight off the bat, is know who your users are, right? So data is very important, because then you can prioritize what is actually within your performance budget or not, right? So every engineering team or engineering department, whether that's front end, back end, every area of engineering will have a performance budget, right? And depending how much technical debt you have, you need to know firstly who your users are. And when you know who they are, then you can prioritize what is important. For example, an official statistic is that more than 90% of the world uses mobile devices to browse the web, right?
Yeah.
So looking at things like mobile first design and being very collaborative with your designers, and also allowing them to understand that that's what we should be tackling first, because the data is saying that, right? So that's one area. The second area is that the engineers themselves, specifically on the front end, need to understand two concepts. The first one is graceful degradation, and the second one is progressive enhancement. So this is when you're targeting different. So you can imagine progressive enhancement is when you're going to progressively build on top and enhance based on the particular device or viewport or browser that you have. Graceful degradation is when you're supporting older technologies, because some users, unfortunately, are still using older browsers, older devices. Some people might still be using 3G devices, so you've got to throttle through those different networks in order to lazy load certain data that you want to display first and stuff like that. So number one thing, the key is to understand who your users are. That's number one. Secondly, make sure that everybody understands who those users are also on the team. So then the performance budget can be distributed in a way which is user driven, right? Then you have to work really closely with your UX team, with your UI team, mostly UX though, in order to understand which features are critical for the experience and which features are nice to have, right? Then you can gracefully, go through those two funnels, the nice to haves or the critical features, and then you can progressively enhance them as well. So that's, if you're talking about design and front-end engineering, that's where you would be mostly. Now, if you're going really technical, then obviously you'll be using modern technologies such as Next.js, which allows you to really drive the performance of your web applications. You'll be lazy loading, like figuring out what you can load on the server first before you send it to the client.
Right.
What needs to be loaded on the client, what needs to be loaded on the server, so stuff like that. But it's critical that you have individuals on the team that are really focused and also understanding of performance in general. And this is just not performance with APIs and data and stuff, but actually just performance in general when it comes to loading certain assets and just certain web pages on different devices. So it's a broad discussion generally, but having your UX team on board and both of you are going against the same goal, which is how can we make this product or web page or web application most performant for the user. The user is the number one most important thing.
Yeah.
So it's not about, oh, I want to use the most modern technology, I want to use the most, the hottest web framework out there. Does it make sense for our users? What is our demographic? What does our statistics say? And do we have that performance budget? And do we have the right team members on the UX team that can align with the front end engineers and really deliver that experience under our performance budget?
That's really interesting. So you mentioned know your customer. So how are you guys analyzing data on the platforms you're building? Like, what tools do you use to either tag specific actions within the journey or tag the entire journey, and then monitor the success of that journey based on whatever KPIs you'd have set beforehand? So question is, what tools do you have in place to know your customer based on real life data?
I think, Jay, you see the first area of that before he moves into the technical.
Yeah. So ultimately,
sorry, I put you on the spot there.
There's a ton of kind of tools on the market, but in particular, we use kind of tools like kind of quantum metric, for example, that kind of allow us to kind of understand the kind of customer kind of engagement kind of through our kind of funnel. Kind of what are they looking at? Kind of what are they seeing? Like using things such as like session replays, so that we can kind of look back on various kind of user sessions, or if it's flagged kind of issues or errors or rage clicks at particular parts of the funnel, we can kind of review and can replay those sessions kind of as well, which kind of gives us insight. We also can use kind of tools such as like GA as well. Ultimately, like, it's not just kind of limited to kind of those tools. It depends on like the kind of preference of your kind of company, and also kind of the budget of your company as well. But ultimately, all of these tools pretty much do like similar things. They kind of allow you to kind of look at your kind of customer kind of usage and kind of behavior, kind of where the attention within your kind of product is, kind of how customer behaviors might be changing kind of over time, like where the drop-off rates are. There's kind of so many different things that you can kind of use it for, and then on top of that, you can start to run kind of experiments as well, kind of through kind of a lot of these kind of platforms as well. So yeah, in a nutshell, like that's what we're kind of currently kind of using, but definitely kind of exploring kind of more options that are out there as well.
Awesome. So follow-up question to that, Saad. So what do you feel like the design teams should take into account when they're designing, especially from a performance point of view and data?
Simplicity, not assuming that all your users know how to use the web and how to use products in general, so simplifying the experience as much as possible, but also just, again, not designing for specific devices. But what I mean by that is, if you're going mobile first, don't go mobile first only iPhone, right? Go mobile first on every device, because you shouldn't discriminate against the actual device. It's the medium itself that you want to tackle, right? So if you're doing mobile first, do mobile first. Don't do iPhone first or Android first. That's if you're doing on the web. Obviously, you might have a team that are native as well, that are specific for iOS or specific for Android. But the experience should generally try to be as close as possible, right? Second thing is I'm guessing we're gonna get to that collaboration between design and devs, but the collaboration needs to be actively thought about and proactively pursued, not just we're collaborative and no one's actually really collaborating, right?
Yeah.
So
Like no one knows each other's names.
exactly. So it needs to be actively pursued. And when you have this collaborative environment, and I like to call something that you've got two types of collaboration, right? You've got the digital collaboration, then you've got the old school. Let's pull up a chair and let's deal with this problem that we have. So I think if you understand or you have this collaborative environment, then the designer should never be, or developers should never be in a position where they're guessing what the other team are thinking.
Okay.
Right?
How do you stop that from happening?
Collaboration, checking in with each other, not leaving, for example, for advice to developers, not leaving something to the very end when you seek out your designers to do a design QA. They should they should be in the process. Like, hey man, I'm currently working on this particular feature and it's not quite what I expected. Can we realign and do some adjustment here?
Yeah.
So it's understanding that that relationship and bonding that relationship and really nurturing it, right? That way you can start to both see each other's visions. So you've got the understanding of the users through your data, then you've got the collaboration between the two teams or more that are actively pursuing this problem solving in order to cater for those users, right? In that way, that's how you can achieve a common ground. So yeah, it's a difficult one though, especially if you're dealing with a lot of people. Like if you're in an organization where there's a lot of individuals, you have to improvise and you have to do what is most necessary first, and seek out those individuals who are going to help you on that journey as well.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Just like to add to that
go ahead,
quickly, because I think you used a phrase called like the old school, and I believe like the old school should be like a standard practice. So it shouldn't be like, it should be something which is kind of put in place or kind of part of any kind of tech teams kind of onboarding when someone's been introduced to the culture. That kind of side by side kind of collaboration is incredibly kind of important. And when it comes, just to add in terms of like how tech teams should be collaborating, that side by side collaboration is something which is continuous, and it starts like all the way from like the data, understanding the data, right? So every team member within the product team should be responsible for looking into the data that their product is kind of dishing out, and making their own kind of analysis of the kind of customers and using the product so that they can actually have a constructive conversation with their peers within that product. Once you've had those conversations and you've kind of identified, potential kind of problems that might need solving, for example, you can go into this kind of discovery period, which kind of is known as kind of continuous discovery, and which is a kind of methodology that we follow kind of as well. And that kind of brings the development teams and the product managers and the designers into the process of kind of discovering opportunities and solving problems from the very beginning and all the way to the end. And when I say from the very beginning, like even like developers are involved in the kind of customer interviews, for example, in terms of like observing those customer interviews.
Wow, really? That's incredible. I've never heard of that.
They may even conduct some of the interviews kind of as well. And the reason why this is so important is because you actually build up shared understanding of the customer problem that you're solving. A lot of the issues that end up happening in product teams is that there's very hard handovers between kind of product design and engineers in the sense of the product managers may do some discovery and identify a problem. They pass that over to the designers, who then do some solution discovery, who then hand that over to developers, who then build a product. If you could take everyone on the journey from the very beginning, everyone's got that shared understanding. Everyone is kind of discovering what the problem is together, everyone's solving the problem together, everyone's implementing it together, and then they're following up on the metrics together. And if you kind of breed that kind of culture within your organization, then that is what's going to kind of really kind of encourage solid collaboration and kind of throughout the products.
Wow, that's incredible. So how would we do that, for example, when you have a team that has back end, forefront end, QA, Scrum Master, product owner? How do you involve those people in your design kind of process, right? When you're doing discovery or customer testing, do you have an advocate, like one person within the context of the engineering team that is responsible to be a part of those, or like how would you actually structure it on the ground?
So it will generally kind of start with the leads. So like your kind of design lead, tech lead, and kind of product lead, and you'll kind of have open forums. You could kind of call that kind of grooming sessions or kind of discovery sessions, where you kind of bring everybody kind of into the kind of initial kind of conversations as well. And look, like in a perfect world, you would have everybody kind of participating, you know,
Right.
in kind of customer discovery, etc. But the idea of it is to kind of bring as many of the team members into that process as possible, to deliver that shared understanding, and those who can't kind of be a part of that process or a part of those kind of ceremonies, they're kind of updated and kind of kept into the loop in terms of like the findings and kind of what the action points were, what was decided in those sessions, so that nobody is kind of left out. So no information is generally kind of lost.
That's amazing. So I think it kind of answers my next question, which is going to be, what's the best example of collaboration you've seen between design and development? I think you've already answered that. Yeah, and that's really incredible. So yeah, go ahead.
No, I think Jay covered that already. But I just want to make a point there about the old school way of collaboration. And this will be a question actually to both of you, is how do you manage that with remote teams? Because you can't just pull up a chair, right? If you're on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
Like, how would you manage that sort of collaboration?
I actually found it easier. So I've worked in both situations where the entire team was essentially remote, and another situation where everyone was on site. In the remote case, because the culture was Microsoft Teams, everyone was one call away.
Yeah.
Right. So it was a lot easier to just quickly call a front end dev and just say, let's see the screen, let's see what you're building on Android. Right. Then they'll share their screen, go through the emulator, we go through the code. If they had a problem, they'd just call me on Teams, they'd share the screen, would work it out. So it was extremely collaborative. We knew each other's names because the name is on the screen, right? So you don't have that awkward, I forgot your name, what's your name thing, right? So I actually found it much easier. Whereas now, when everyone's on site and you're like, what's your name again? Right?
Yeah, haven't seen you before,
I have seen you before. I just don't remember your name. So
I think it's worse if they know your name and you don't know theirs.
Yeah, and they all do, because I'm the only black guy in the office. So everyone knows Matsi. But they're like a million Mohammeds. So yeah, I feel like it's actually easier remote. Long story short.
Cool. Interesting. Yeah, I think also tools that are, all the modern tools that we have today, like Figma, for example, you can easily just have a conversation in there, about a particular element, about a particular page or what. So I think we use that a lot. Like we actually do our design QAs that way, and that helps a lot as well. But I think I don't know, there's nothing for me can beat just side by side on the same computer screen, and just really building together.
I'm the same, but I think that it's I think both have their benefits, and I think that one thing that needs to be kind of communicated to anybody that is kind of working remotely is you have to really be kind of self-aware of kind of how often are you kind of communicating with your team? And actually, it should be at the forefront of your mind to over communicate as well. And kind of the reason I say that is when you're in an office-based environment, there's tons of conversations that happen side of desks, by the kind of water cooler, as they like to say, in the canteens. Those that kind of smoke in the office will all kind of have conversations amongst themselves as well. And a lot of it is around kind of the business. And when you're kind of working remote, there is a very high chance that you're going to be kind of out of the loops of some of these kind of quick decisions that are being made, or these kind of conversations that are being had. Which is why if you are kind of finding yourself kind of working remotely, it's important for you to kind of over communicate and kind of reach out to your colleagues and try and get as much information as possible on a kind of regular basis, because I think if you kind of there's a risk of like becoming complacent when you're remote. And if you're kind of somebody who kind of doesn't necessarily kind of engage kind of with people when you're in the office, right? Someone who came onto our podcast kind of said that when you're working remote, like some of your characteristics will actually amplify. So if you are kind of a character that doesn't kind of engage much with people anyway, but you might hear the odd conversation or be brought into a conversation, when you're remote, you're even less likely to be aware of these kind of conversations that are happening. So just be very conscious to kind of over communicate with your colleagues.
True. We've got a question for you, Jay. So you mentioned that your background is in traditional product design, right? Physical product design?
Physical and digital, yeah.
Physical and digital. So what would you say is the difference in the design process between physical and digital products?
There isn't a difference, and that's why I love it. That's why I think I'm one of the few people when I have conversations about kind of degrees. Like a lot of people tell me that their degree was useless, that they didn't need their degree to kind of get their job. My degree is relevant. When it comes to the design process, in terms of the double diamond, for example, just use that kind of classic example. Like that is something which has been around for kind of many years, and it's kind of derived from kind of other forms of user-centered design and user-centered interaction design, and those principles can be applied to physical products. The only difference is the output, right? So you're still going through a discovery phase. You're doing research. You're doing competitive analysis. You're testing with customers. You're getting their feedback. You're iterating, and then you're solving, and then you're producing something and shipping it, and then you're optimizing on that product. That's why various products that we all use and know and love, such as like the iPhone, for example, they have versions 1, 2, 3, 4, 14. So the process in the physical world still remains the same as digital. Just digital has come a bit later in terms of like the maturity, and in fact, we're just adopting what has always existed.
So I have a question about that. I guess it's a theory that I have, that physical products tend to incrementally add features a lot slower than digital products do. So for example, the iPhone, there's a reason the iPhone has looked the way it's looked, because they're trying to increase its lifespan. That's my theory, right? Same with cars, right? If they design their cars the same way they do their concept cars, I mean, theoretically they could, but they don't, because they want to increase the lifespan of that product, right, over decades. Is that true? Would you say that's true in physical product design, where you're not trying to throw everything in the kitchen sink at it, but you're trying to, as a business case, put as little as you can to make it viable in the market, and then slowly, incrementally improve it? Whereas with digital products, it's a little different, because you can't do it slowly, because digital changes so quickly. So if you want to be best first in the market, you better put as many features as your customers need in there, and then sustain that technology over time in a slightly different way than you would a physical product. Would you say that's an accurate thing to say?
No, I would say that I would say they're kind of similar in the sense of, if you look at any startup, right? So even Notion, for example, like the way that Notion started, like roughly 10 years ago, compared to the product that we have today, is completely different. Like Notion was kind of built to kind of allow people to kind of create their own kind of software and apps, right? And now they've kind of evolved into a place where you can use kind of templates that use the kind of bare bones of what they were traditionally using to kind of create those softwares and apps, to now, kind of transform their kind of workflows. And they've managed to kind of do that over time by kind of putting out an initial version and kind of testing it with customers, getting feedback, iterating on it until they get to the point where they are today. It's the same thing with kind of physical products. The only difference is, and I'll say the biggest differentiator, is the amount of data points that can be collected. So like physical products is very difficult to kind of get the data points in terms of like how are your customers using that physical product. Like everybody that has bought a Dyson, there isn't a kind of chip or a sensor within your Dyson that is kind of going back to Dyson and saying, okay, this customer uses this 7 a.m. every morning. Like they're not getting those.
Knowing Dyson, I wouldn't be sure about that.
maybe there is, but it's not public. And but when you come to kind of digital products like that are on your phone or kind of connected to the web, we have all of that information, and that's the advantage, and that's why it's digital products are able to kind of scale and evolve at a much faster rate, I would say.
Yeah, that's a very valid point. So my next question is for both of you, starting with Saad. What is your design or development pet peeve? Well, I guess development for you, Saad, and Jay, design pet peeve.
So engineering pet peeve. I've never been asked that before. Okay. I would say stubbornness of other engineers, and what that with technology specifically. So, I want to use this piece of tech or this tech stack, and that's it. I'm not deviating. I'm not doing anything else. Right. I guess it's more really annoying than a pet peeve, but it's that type of mentality, and I think that doesn't drive you forward as a collaborative person, or even someone who is looking to grow or advance in your technical knowledge, because how technology should be thought about is nothing is better than anything else. It's just what is right for the given problem, right? So I would say that stubbornness to adapt and to collaborate with other members of the team in terms of solving problems using the correct technology, not just what you like. It's a good question though. I've never been asked that before. I mean, I've got other pet peeves which are more personal pet peeves, professional pet peeves, but not from that context. It's a good question.
That's a very tough question.
It is. It's difficult.
Ooh, design pet peeve. I would say that a design pet peeve of mine is that a lot of designers are kind of idealists. And what I mean by that is they'll read an article on Medium, for example, and they will say, we need to do this, or we need to be operating like that. And there's a lack of awareness that I find consistently in terms of what efforts are required in order to bring that change, or to bring that level of kind of capability or competency into an organization. And because designers tend to be idealists, they seem to think they can kind of take a cookie cutter kind of approach and say, it worked for Spotify, it's going to work for us. It worked for this company. Why are we not introducing that? Or why are we not introducing that tool? And I think there's a lack of kind of awareness when it comes to the context in terms of like the company that they're operating in, but also the business itself, and the kind of various considerations that need to be made from a business side. And the reason why that's a kind of pet peeve of mine is because I believe that stunts the growth of designers. I think that puts them in the position where they hit a glass ceiling very quickly in their careers. And unless they can open their minds to the kind of constructs of how organizations actually can operate, then they can actually become kind of more creative. So when they do read these things or come across these YouTube videos or these talks or whatever, their brains start thinking in a different way. It's not a cookie cutter approach. It's, if you want to operate like this, then how can I leverage what we have within this company and what the company values in order to kind of get this in there? And I think we need to help them to kind of change their kind of mindset there.
Interesting. Mine's very simple: detaching Figma components. We've got a question from Amira. Question to Jay: which system is better for product team to follow, Double Diamond or Design Thinking Framework? This is one of those "it depends" questions.
It depends, but there's a ton of frameworks that are out there, and effectively, I'm just gonna be honest. They're telling you the same things. They're telling you to go wide, do research, empathize with your customer, understand the problems that they're facing, and then
Converge.
come up with solutions and test those solutions, get some validation, and then you double down on a full kind of solution. Call it the double diamonds, call it like design thinking. It's all the same process, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I'm sure the creators will differ, but I've seen it. I've literally applied it myself in different organizations in terms of like both of those frameworks.
Yeah,
and it's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. Question to Saad: how has AI, big elephant in the room? Here it is. How has AI impacted software engineer space, and how has it changed your workflow personally?
Listen to the latest episode of the Life in Tech podcast.
That's a nice segue to your podcast.
Yeah, so we recently tackled the ChatGPT phenomenon. So, but I'll answer this one specifically. It's a good question. So, I think I don't believe in the idea of AI is going to replace the engineer. I think it's going to support the engineer. So, for example, ChatGPT, for example, is very useful in some cases. We use I've used it at work to paste an error, to see where the error is coming from and to see what answer I get out of that. So I think it's going to evolve more and more, and I think it's going to cause more anxiety than what it already has. But I think if we look at it from a different perspective and vantage point, I think AI can be really supportive specifically for engineers, software engineers. It could probably help with debugging specifically. It can probably help with learning new concepts quicker. So instead of digging deep, and we mentioned this on the podcast, is instead of going to documentation and really spending a lot of time to learn something, you can easily just, ask the AI. And I'm using ChatGPT as the main example here. But then it can be argued, okay, but I can Google that. But it's not the same thing. We mentioned this. It's not the same thing. We mentioned this on the podcast episode. So I think it's going to be a supportive mechanism, not an overtaking one. And I think the language that's being used around AI and how it's being marketed needs to be rephrased. It needs to be rephrased completely. I think marketers and recruiters are really leveraging off AI more than the actual engineer or designer or the person who's actually going to be using it for their benefit. And I think if you ask the general public about AI, they don't really know what it is or what, how it's built, and I think they just see it as like some scary, mammoth of a technology that's going to take over the human race. And it's just like, come on,
You don't believe that? I think that's going to happen inevitably.
No way. Like,
tune in to the latest episode of Life in Tech podcast. we discussed this.
No, it's not going to replace human beings. It's going to
Also,
support human beings.
There's a book called Scary Smart as well.
Yeah, we mentioned
Scary
this in the
Smart by
podcast. So,
kind of Mo Goldar.
Yeah.
Anyone who's kind of interested in whether or not we're going to turn into this kind of matrix kind of society or dystopia, then definitely check out that book.
yeah. It's look, you have to appreciate the technology. If you're someone who is tech savvy and you know, especially engineers, you have to appreciate the effort that has been done towards AI, right? And I think if you look at it from that context, then you can really leverage the technology in supporting your own day-to-day work. You know, as I said, I use it. Notion, now I was just speaking to Jay about this the other day, Notion has this AI.
Yeah, and
So,
Miro as well,
you know,
right?
like
Miro has Miro AI.
yeah, so it's like it's what do you mean by AI? Like, do you mean, you know, some rebellious robot that's going to just walk into the office and, you know, tell everyone to get out and then do everyone's work in the space of 5 minutes? Or do you actually mean like artificial intelligence in the tools that we already use, the Notions, the Chat GBTs, and other tools? So I think it's going to be a supporting mechanism to answer it shortly.
True. So speaking of your podcast, what inspired you guys to launch your podcast, and what is the end game with it?
You want the short story or the long one?
We're 51 minutes in, so the medium version.
The medium. So Jay and I, when we met, we went on lunch together, and then we went on a few lunches after that and a few dinners and stuff. And we used to always get into very big topics
hours.
that required a lot of energy and a lot of you know, speech power and energy.
Yeah.
And it was like, we could make, I don't know who mentioned it. It was one of us, but we said we should do a podcast. And I was like, it's not a bad idea, actually. Went online, ended up spending like a lot of money on equipment. And then we done like 2 episodes in my place, and was like, no, the quality is not good. Scrapped that, recorded it another 2 times, scrapped that. So the first episode actually, I think, recorded 5 times, 4 or 5 times.
I think it's 6 times.
Wow.
So
Just because of the quality, or you weren't happy with the
we
content?
we were like
our
quality
control was, the bar was very high. It's extremely high.
Probably a bit too high. So it just started over a conversation, and then we found a space here in the UAE, in Dubai, where you can rent out like the space and the equipment and stuff. We went off about 17 episodes, which we called season 1. There was actually 19, but we scrapped 2 episodes completely because we thought that it wouldn't add value. So we were very
militant when it comes to that.
Yeah, we were very militant in, does this episode actually add value? If it doesn't, then we're going to scrap it,
Right.
even though we've paid for the production of it.
Yeah.
We just kicked off season 2 a couple of weeks ago. So season 2 is going to consist of about 12 episodes. We upload every Monday. So this coming Monday is going to be the 3rd episode of season 2. And we've actually decided now to go fully remote. So if you're seeing the setup here, is actually going to be the setup for the Life in Tech podcast, because we want to branch out and actually get some international guests.
Exactly. We're super excited about that, because
That's going to be amazing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that'll take it up the next level. I'm actually lucky that when I started thinking of investing in equipment, like you're saying, better mics, etc. Adobe released their podcast enhancer platform. So it's called Adobe Podcast.
Okay.
Yeah, so it basically takes like a really bad quality Zoom call type audio, just upload it there, it enhances it using AI, and then it's studio quality, right? Like just in seconds.
So coming back to the AI question that Isaac has asked, we actually use that on the podcast. So there's a software that we use called Descript, and what this does for us is we just drag and drop a piece of the podcast, and it will give us the transliteration of that, and it's pretty accurate, to be honest. there's obviously a few things that I need to go in there and actually tidy up. But because me and Jay have a tendency to pause when we speak or say a lot, and we both do it. So
We're reflective individuals.
we're very reflective individuals. So but what's amazing about this software, not only does it give you like the subtitles, it also gives you an option to say, I see a pause here, you want to shorten that up a bit. And so that's what I mean by the supportive mechanism. Like, I'm still an engineer, I could do that manually, but why, when there's something that can do that for me and automate that process. So coming back to the podcast, it was quite interesting because we wasn't really sure what the response was going to be for that and how people were going to receive that. So season 1 kind of gave us that nice boost because I can't remember the exact numbers, Jay might know them, but Spotify ranked us quite high in the, was it in the region or globally? I can't remember, Jay.
35%, I think, right?
It was globally. Yeah. I think it's like top 15% globally and top 20% globally for like reshares as well, which we were pretty happy with for kind of our first season. Like, to get those kind of stats from Spotify was pretty cool, and it kind of gave us some momentum and encouragement to continue. But ultimately, like you mentioned about like an end goal for the podcast, and I don't think there is one kind of per se. Like, we're doing this podcast for ourselves and for people like us, and like what kind of Saad was saying, like we're having these conversations anyway. So we just thought, why not just record them? And maybe it's something that we could reflect back on. And if we, it's almost like journaling in a way.
Interesting.
It's a way for us to kind of just reflect on our experiences, advise each other, advise ourselves, advise our future self, or maybe our past self in the version of somebody who's new to the industry. Like, they can start picking up this kind of information, and we can kind of share it with them, or share the insights from our guests that come onto the show. Like, this is kind of something that we just done personally, and hopefully it's reaching kind of more and more people, and they're getting value from it. And if anyone is listening to kind of this live stream, we'd be more than happy to kind of get the kind of insights and feedback from yourselves as well, because we're always wanting to improve.
Amazing.
Go ahead. Just a funny point there is talking about Spotify. We didn't realize until I think the end of season 1, but they were categorizing us in the fashion category. And I was like, Jay, I know you're quite fashionable, but me, I don't know why they're putting me. So Jay was like emailing them, was like, hey, we're kind of in the wrong.
We've done like a year, like we've pretty much done almost like the best part of a year in the wrong category.
Oh wow! I was thought you selected your own category.
Yeah, we did, but I
don't know what.
Oh wow!
Then when we tried to rectify it on our side, and it still would not update. So then I had to literally a series of emails got sent to Spotify, and they changed it for us.
They changed it. So now that you're going international, who is your dream podcast guest?
Aaron Draplin.
Who's that?
Aaron Draplin. This is from the design side. From the engineer side, Sarah Drasner.
Is that the lady who wrote the book you were talking about?
Yeah. I would if I can pull it up somewhere here.
Let's see.
Okay. It's not in reach, unfortunately. Awesome engineer, very empathetic engineer. Just part of a few core teams that of big technologies in the scene. So she's definitely one I would love to get some insight from. Aaron Draplin, I'm surprised none of you know him.
I'll look him up after this.
The designer, brand designer.
Oh yes. I think I know who you're talking about. Yeah. I think I know.
The very vocal one, the very outspoken, loud individual. I think it'd just be fun, right? But yeah.
And my last question: what are your personal career goals, and what steps are you taking to achieve them? Starting with Jay.
Personal career goals. I think for me, I think like I'm at kind of a point in my career where I don't know, like I'm always learning, and I think from a design perspective, I kind of want to kind of broaden out kind of what can design thinking and kind of UX practices can be kind of broadened out to, and kind of where else can they add value? You know, like are there other kind of initiatives that we could drive? Like, for instance, experimentation, for example, is something that I've got a very kind of keen interest in. You know, and traditionally, like if you look at kind of companies like that, it tends to be kind of housed within like the data teams and stuff and data intelligence teams. But you know, could UX potentially kind of be a driving force behind that when it comes to kind of loyalty kind of as well? You know, that's traditionally kind of driven by kind of marketing teams, but could user experience be a driving force behind that also? And also, when it comes to the digital experience, I think, you know, we're all kind of on this call, everyone's kind of familiar and kind of with that, but our kind of accountability when it comes to user experience should actually branch much wider than that. And it should kind of go into it should cover all customer touch points. You know, whether they're kind of calling us up or emailing us or walking into a store, you know, like these interactions are all part of the customer experience or the user experience. And I think that's something that, you know, potentially user experience professionals could be kind of driving or collaborating more with their kind of CX counterparts, etc. So these are, I would say, the three buckets that I've got a keen interest in. How that's going to grow my career, or if it's going to grow, I don't know. But yeah, that's definitely something that I'm looking into.
Same question to me.
Yeah, Saad.
For me, I guess remaining a core engineer. You know, I always want to stay in the craft itself. Whether that moves more into the advocacy type of thing, where I'm doing more, I think, giving back to the community and stuff, and more conferences and stuff like that. You know, open source stuff would be cool as well. So I'm not really sure, but I do know I would like to remain a core engineer. Some one way, shape, or form. Like, I don't ever want to be removed from that space. So is it? I don't know. I have, because I've recently changed roles, so I haven't really thought about. I haven't realigned with myself to think about that a bit deeply. You know? But definitely, it's in the technical space. I don't know. Let's see what the future holds.
Let's see. We'll be watching.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thanks for coming on, guys. We are 1 hour, 2 minutes in, which I think is a good place to say goodbye.
Excellent.
So
thank you for having
you
us.
can find Jay and Saad on their podcast, Life in Tech, featuring Jay and Saad. Really great. We'll probably put a link to it later on the comments, so you can find it easily. But
you can find us on Spotify and
very easy to find
platforms. So just type in Life in Tech, or even just, you know, type in Life in Tech and just like type Saad's name, and it's most likely going to come up.
Exactly. Awesome. Thanks so much, guys.
Why is that actually?
It always comes up for me if I'm looking for it. Like, if I put my name, it doesn't come up as quickly.
Cool.
Saad is
thank
a
you,
very
Betsy.
unique name.
Yeah. So, well, in this region,
depending on where you are.
Depends where you are. And thanks for wearing black shirts. Appreciate the.
That wasn't planned, by the way. For the audience, that was not planned. Okay. So.
I'm just the only one who can't grow a beard, so I'm just feeling weird right now.
It'll come.
It's right, man. It's okay, man. It's,
yeah, I've learned to live with it. Cool. Thanks, guys. Have a good night. Thanks everyone who's online.
Thank you, everyone.
Catch you on the next one.
Thanks for all your questions.
See you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.